Hello, and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a weekly podcast where we talk about some Dungeons and Dragons, and we see how it can fit into our role-playing campaigns. That was weird.
That was great. That's like a proper narrator audiobook that you were doing, but with weird inflections here and there. I liked it.
Yeah, I know. I don't know where it came from, but I was like, I went and I built it up. I went,
yeah, I was ready. I had my hands in the air.
I was like, I'm gonna go against the card and just
different.
On it down. Here we are.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. Hi.
Hi, I am here with Fiona as ever.
Hello, yes.
And we are going to be talking about some Dungeons and Dragons, as I said. What Dungeons and Dragons are we going to be talking about? Or is this too early? Oh my gosh, we'll go straight into it.
No, it's because we've already had our pre-chat. That's all right. But yeah, well, let's go straight into it, because I think we're gonna have some interesting things. Because I was like, when you picked this topic for us last week, I was like, I don't know much about. It's one of the Monstrous Compendiums, and I was like, I don't know of it. And then I was like, wait, there's a bit of magic related to it. And then I just went down a huge rabbit hole. So I have loads to talk about. But today, friends, we are going to be talking about the Monstrous Compendium Volume 4, Eldraine Creatures. Mm-hmm. So yes, this is based on a Magic the Gathering set, the Wilds of Eldraine, which came out last year, and which itself is like part 2 of a set with Thrones of Eldraine and Wilds of Eldraine. And think fairy tales, think knights in shining armor, Camelot, a little bit of maybe Never After as well, the Dimension 20 show.
Yes.
Basically, it's a world that's inspired by Arthurian legend and European sort of folk tales and fairy tales. So I was like, oh, when you sort of put this, I had not really read this before, and then had a good dive in. So I'm excited to talk about Eldraine creatures.
The setting is very much, as you said, like very on the nose, grim fairy tales, Shrek.
Shrek is in there for sure. Yeah,
there's a little bit of that because there's like walking gingerbread people, which is like a critical part of my Shrek memory is the gingerbread man. But I think the other thing is when I saw it, I don't know why. It just came. I was like, I don't know what this is. What is this? And then I just looked at some pictures, like, these are cool pictures.
Yeah,
and I think that was the kind of critical part of it, which is a really big thing with Magic the Gathering. They've got all the artists, they have all of them, every single one, and they're all very talented. And so there's quite a lot of good stuff here. And I've never played Magic the Gathering, but Fiona has. And I thought you probably would have more to say on this than I.
So what I would say from this Monstrous Compendium is that it has a little bit about the setting of Eldraine, and then it goes into the I think we've got like 25 different creatures. Yeah. This is the best to my knowledge, and I'm not the best in terms of like Magic itself. So Magic the Gathering obviously is a card game. They release sets, and they're usually different theme sets. But behind each set, there is like a story, something that has inspired this. And Eldraine itself, as I said, was sort of like knights of old and the valor and fairy tales, as you sort of said. And what's interesting about Eldraine is that, like I said, there's been 2 sets for this, like the Throne of Eldraine and then the Wilds of Eldraine. Eldraine itself, I said, medieval setting, there's like 2 big sort of like components to it. We have the realm, which is like that royal court, orderly, we've got 5 kingdoms underneath one, and this idea of questing. And if you go on your quest, you may be chosen to be the high king, so the ruler, or the high queen even, and the ruling of that. And so there was a lot of stuff about medieval knights, trying to find order in the chaos. And then when Wilds of Eldraine came out, that was sort of like more about the magics, so the wild fae, usually fae folk, witches, monstrous things in the woods. The realm itself and wilds are sort of fighting in control, and this idea of like the wild hunt. And there's this thing about the elves used to rule, but then they were driven out by the humans, and now they're in the woods, etc. So there's that nature versus society sort of fighting around it. The thing to note with Magic the Gathering in general, this is like one plane of existence in a multiverse of stuff. We've talked about it before. We've had Ravnica, Theros, Strixhaven. And each of them had their own stories behind them. But the big thing to note, certainly about Eldraine, and where we are when we come to this for the Wilds of Eldraine, is that basically there's been a huge war, the sort of invasion of Phyrexians. Now, Phyrexians, for like, again, too long didn't read. They're the Magic's version of the Borg or Mind Flayers. They are trying to assimilate...
The Reavers? from Mass Effect.
Yeah, anything, a organization or a consciousness that is trying to change other people into them and their perfection. And for the Phyrexians, all their stuff is about being the most perfect version of yourself. That means stripping away your soul, your emotions, and just you would still retain those memories, but you want to be perfect. So this idea of completion, which I really like. So yeah, again, Cybermen from Doctor Who, anything like that. So this sort of idea goes throughout, and there's this war where the Phyrexians started to invade all the different planes of existence, and so battling back and forth. Now, there's this another idea in this thing is that we have protagonists called planeswalkers, who are individuals with some sort of spark, some sort of motivation, and usually quite heroic. And they will go and go to different planes, so they can move between the planes. And often the stories will feature one or two of them that are quite famous as a result. And eventually, at the end of this war, this arc, the Phyrexians were beaten back, but at great cost. And one of the planes that got a lot of the heavy sort of losses was Eldraine. Eldraine, so the High King and Queen were slain. A lot of the people were lost to the Phyrexian sort of completion process. And so now, in the aftermath of this war, we have a world where the realm itself is sort of trying to rebuild. And so the wilds are a little bit more toe-to-toe, the more power to them. And so not only are you recovering from this big invasion of a very alien-like force, but now you have this something called the wicked slumber, this sort of other corruption that's coming in and sort of taking over the society. So that's where we are, in a sense, is that the old order has fallen. The 5 courts that they had, they are now trying to unite under one. And again, the two sort of protagonists that sort of mentioned in this, we have Will and Rowan Kenrith, these 2 twins. There's always twins in fairy tales. So here we go again. 2 people who've been to Strixhaven, so they have sort of magical abilities. 2 planeswalkers who, again, have lost their spark. That they have this sort of ways of how do we save their home? How do we save the realm after their parents have been killed by the Phyrexians? And the way they sort of go about it, Will is sort of more we use our words, we're going to try and diplomacy and get people on side. Whereas Rowan is more no, we need to take action now. And that sort of disagreement comes to a big head in the story. And one thing I would recommend, not only, we'll talk about the story in a second for other reasons, but I would highly recommend checking out, they've got trailers for Magic the Gathering sets. The anime trailer for this particular set, Wilds of Eldraine, of the 2 twins fighting against each other with their magic. So Rowan is all about electricity and fire sort of igniting, because her colours are red and black, whereas you've got Will that's ice, and so he'll have ice lances and stuff, and it's so cool to watch. And it's one of those things, I could watch a whole series. I've seen whole series of this, Full Metal Alchemist, Demon Slayer, that sort of thing, but these 2 rulers are trying to fight it out, and there's questions about whether or not Will, who's taken the title of the High King, is a High King because he's not been on a quest and they've not proven himself. But it's we don't have time to that. We need to unite people against this invading, corrupting force of the wicked slumber, which has come from the wilds.
Yeah, the thing, just to clarify on the video, the story is coming not from this compendium, but is a separate set of videos that you can find on the YouTube channel, which I'm sure Fiona will put in the show notes.
I will, below. Yeah.
It's pretty interesting, and it's got a lot of I think it's got a lot of little tidbits that you're oh, that's kind of cool little political drama. And this sleeping sickness is an affect. You find out the source of it, and there's a relationship to the witches that's actually inherent in the hereditary of this kid who's a secondary character on the side. Yeah. And that's really that's a whole different story about his mother was
Kellen. Yes, another sort of who becomes a planeswalker throughout the thing. So yes. Each of the sets will have a planeswalker, and so Kellen is this. It's interesting. You have these 2 between the Will and Rowan, but then a lot of the story just focuses on this kid, this Kellen. Find a quest to find out who his father is,
which is a High Fae,
or another planeswalker.
And another planeswalker, exactly.
And going on his own quest, which it's the whole story itself it's just a fairy tale, and I think it's really interesting because it really pulls on those tropes, but also has. Again, I know this sounds really silly, and I don't wish to, what's the word, not push down, but diminish from Magic the Gathering's thing. But when certain people turn up and there's certain names, I go, I think that's an important person. This feels a little bit like fan fiction, who is this person? And obviously, if you read every single story, then obviously it is official. But I'm who is this person? It's interesting, but a chakra? I don't know who that is. Turns out, a really big fucking deal. Need to Yeah, so you need certain names. You like, let's go into the wiki of that and make sure I see where they've come from. So there's that as well. So even if you are listening to the story behind the Magic set, you might be interested to go and learn a bit more. So I'd absolutely have the wiki open for it if you're of that sort of inclination. But who's this person? You know,
I didn't, because there was too much, to be honest. Because there was 5 over half an hour episodes that I couldn't listen at 2 times because it was too difficult to listen at 2 times. But I listened at 1.5 times speed to get through it all, because they were quite long, and it did have it would like get you to a story, and then it would just go, and it would start talking about someone else, and you're like, okay, what? And it just, there's another person, and there's another person, and there was quite a lot of things going on.
I will say, I think we both agree that the production quality could be better on the stories. Like, admittedly, you can read the stories; they're in blog form as well, and it's very clear when it changes there. But ultimately, these stories, clearly, someone in the Wizard of the Coast marketing department has gone, we need someone to read out the story. Who here is free? You there. Yeah, and there's mistakes in it. There's someone going, oops, and then repeating the line.
Yeah, there's a bit where they get the whole way through like a half a paragraph, and then they go, oh, I'll do that again.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, and then they do it again, and you're like, why has no one has listened to the edit?
No one's proof checked it. No.
An edit on it. And it's not like the production quality of the video is not bad. The video's got like written text underneath. So it's literally, they have, done the subtitles by hand. They've got images that go with it, but no one has then thought, let's cut out the mistakes.
Yeah.
And there's just pauses where it's like, I'm going to overdo this. Page turn. Big.
We won't be hearing it on the Zoom recording, but how did they just pick up a book and just page the turn on it?
Page turn. And it's just like, for Christ's sake. Yeah, it's really weird. Even 1.5 times, some of those pauses were like, is she died? Is she all right?
It's one of those things where I believe they have got better through current ones, but it's kind of old. It's only a year old. This story came out a year, and even in the comments, people were like, "Hey, it would have been nice if somebody had just checked this sort of thing." And so, yeah, please don't be put off by it. But it is very funny to listen to it, going, "Wait, they've just repeated the same sentence," or they've gone, and you're like, what's going on?
They do, and I'm glad that I'm not the only person that makes those noises when I am like doing recordings, when I go, and then like repeat it again, like that, because that's what you do these things, and you talk to yourself, which is hilarious. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
And like I said, these are long blogs. Yeah, they're about 40 minutes. They're a podcast episode as well. So yeah, I mean, they're in different formats. And what I do like, as you said, they've got the subtitles already embedded into the videos, so that's very cool. That you can read the blog, etc. It's just unfortunate that one of the main ways, why have it a video, why have it as a podcast, and like the actual podcast as well, I believe, I only listened to a little bit of it, is 2 people dissecting the story. So it's not even that person reading out the story.
Okay.
And I was like, in later ones, it is definitely just the person reading the story. So I did find it really interesting. It's like, did nobody go, maybe we should just contact someone and just change the edit? I don't know. Anyway,
it's fine.
There are different ways for you to access the story, is what I wanted to put out. And like some people, like I said, for Magic the Gathering, some people just care about the cards and making up the decks because it's a game. They don't really care too much about the theme. That's totally fine. For me, as someone, my partner got me into Magic, and I got through Duskmourn, which I was saying before is like this haunted house sort of thing. I didn't even realize there was a story behind it until I sort of listened to it and read it, and I was like, this is actually really interesting, because then it helps you inspire, like, okay, encounters in like story seeds. What if you're trapped in a haunted house? And same thing here. I would say, I don't know about yourself, I was never too fussed about fairy tales or whatever. I watched Never After, as I mentioned, and I like the darkness and the horror of it. But then I was like, I know of fairy tales, obviously grown up in England, read them all out. This story, the way it talks about it, I was like, actually, these are really I don't want to say simple, that's not what I want, but like really easy stories that everyone can slip into because everyone knows the tropes. You see what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. And it plays on them in fun ways and twists things around, and hyper, like the candy stuff we're going to get onto, it takes it to another extreme. And the geese, it takes it to another extreme, and like the giant land,
yes,
and it's fun, and it has its own elements to it. And I think there's lots of little, as I was saying in the videos, the fae and the way that they ran the courts and the night things. I think like, if you're looking for ideas to build your world or your environment, there's some things in here that you're like, these are cool little different takes on those sorts of tropes as well, which I thought were
absolutely.
quite interesting. And I think, which is always like good for GMs to be having in your back pocket for when you're like, we're going to turn left instead of right. Okay. Yeah, you know. And
because I was thinking to myself about like Wild Beyond the Witchlight, because obviously that is a very it's a very much like a non-combat adventure. It is a fairy tale itself, but what if like the players were like, well, we want to stay more in this place, in this particular domain. Maybe they get transferred to Eldraine after the war and stuff. And I just thought, like, if you're already in that sort of system, and or even like, I want to have something different as an encounter here. Any of these creatures that it mentions in this particular compendium, you could absolutely put in, and it's interesting and different. There's some really cracking ones in here. So that's why I wanted to give you the setup to the sort of the context of these things. So I think it's important to know that there is political intrigue, and you could be a knight and old bold and stuff like that. But equally, you could take these creatures and just put them in there. They are very more whimsical. There's definitely sort of like cheeky, like fairy sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I just suddenly was like, hey, you know what? I've not actually done like a fairy tale thing, because when we think of D&D, again, we're like high fantasy. I'm like, oh yeah, knights in shining armor, I guess. But also, it's defeating goblins or whatever. Here, it's like it's not that at all. You know what? There feels like a palpable difference, and maybe it's just the sugar coating of the fairy tale. I don't know.
Well, I think you're right, because it doesn't feel like it feels like the Forgotten Realms is not filled with unicorns and giant stags and like Pegasi. Particularly, doesn't it? It feels like you're going to go into the woods and meet maybe an ogre and a goblin, right?
Yes.
Potentially a troll, but like that still feels a bit too fantasy tropey. Do you know what I mean?
It's likely that you're not on a great quest to fulfill your destiny. It is more like we are already adventurers, and we're trying to look after. Like, it's more grounded, I guess, is the thing.
Exactly.
It's which is fine. There's no problem with that. But yeah,
100%. And as you said, like Wild Beyond the Witch, like you end up in the Feywild, or you just want to inject a bit more mystical fantasy, I guess, or whatever it is, or like fey fantasy or folk fantasy into it. Then I think it's a really good. It's got some really cool kind of things, and like some of the ones that are sort of more spirit based and stuff like the Archon and like the Nightmare.
Spectre of Night. Is that the one you're thinking of, which is the opposite of the Archon?
Yes, exactly. That one. Those are really cool. And like all the different ways that it's dealt with fairies and like giving them a different sort of like affectation to the sort of standard fairy sort of way of being. Really cool. So yeah, we should just go through them, I guess.
Yeah. There's a good like 25 of them here. Like you said, some of them are under like the thing of like fairies or high fae. There's like different ones for that. And yeah, we could go through them. And like I said, like I don't know if I'd put all of them into like a story, but I think one or two of them just to maybe to switch stuff out would be quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I guess is there any that you would like to talk about first?
Well, then let's look at the fairies, because you just mentioned them, and it's an interesting look at a different way of creating fairies and sort of doing things. They said the fairies of Eldraine are winged elfin creatures similar to sprites or pixies, unpredictable, unreliable, and amoral. They lurk in the wilds and harass travelers they perceive as intruders, which is, yes, a little bit like other fairies, but there's a different take on particularly the one I like is the Pathlighter one.
Yes.
Which is because you've got the fairy borrower, which I think by just literally saying those two words, you've got it all in your head. They are like the borrowers. They go in and steal things just to see if it would be funny, basically.
Yes, pretty much.
And then you've got fairy pests, which are annoying. They like to cause annoyance, fear, and pain.
Yes.
And those are quite fun. And they have black feathered wings sprouting from their shoulders, and they do a theft of nerves, which is a fairy unleash a burst of mind-muddling magic and a 15-foot cone. Each creature in the area must succeed on an intelligence saving throw or have the frightened condition for a minute. And they have little things like that, which are quite kind of like thematic, but not as. I think my favorite, as I said, is the fairy Pathlighter, which is they pry into human lives, sometimes to help, like a fairy godparent, and sometimes to harm. In the Wilds of Eldraine, the fairy Pathlighters often serve as protectors for the lost, the glow of their guiding lanterns leading the weary travelers to respite. And they're about the size of a human, so they're not like
wild. I'm like, whoa, that's really big.
Well, it's a big fairy.
Compared to that fairy pest, which also is like, they're the size of a human toddler. And you're like, that's still pretty big compared to the fairy borrowers, which are like 8 inches tall. So like, there's a big variation in sizes here.
But what I like about them is these have got large white rings that become more translucent towards the edges, which they look really cool. Very cool little piece of art.
Yeah.
And what they have is this lamplighter and that guiding light, which the way thematically works is cool, but the way it actually works in the rules is a little bit shit. But that's the only thing that's a problem with it. So like they have they've got a couple of things. So they have this sheds a dim light in a 15-foot radius at all times, which is kind of nice, and that works. But you think like the whole part of them is this like lamp light, this like holding, and it has a guiding light which it can use as a bonus action only twice a day.
Yeah.
And it does a 30-foot radius sphere of magical light. Sensor set would last for 1 minute.
Yeah.
Each creature of the fairy's choice in that area gains 5 temporary hit points, which is fine, and advantage on wisdom throws. But it's kind of a bit of a shame because it feels like it should. I get they have to mechanically add this temporary hit points as a thing that can't be constant, but also who cares? Secondly, it feels like what would be nice is it could last for an hour or for 8 hours or until you find where you need to go or something like that.
Make it a bit more flavoursome rather than, because obviously it's meant for combat, right? And I'd also say like, because that idea of the light, you see the light and so you're emboldened against maybe fear attacks. So I see that. I do think 5 temporary hit points, which obviously if you start it's in that turn, you're always going to gain it, even if they go away. I think bump it up a little bit, like 10.
Yeah.
5 seems a bit rubbish, especially if it's a human-sized fairy. If it's like smaller fairy, maybe. I don't know. Like I felt that as well. But like, yeah, I think make it last a little, 10 minutes or an hour or something like that, rather than a minute. Because clearly this is going to be used in combat as well as and it's a bonus action, which is not the worst thing. But I just feel a bit like,
I just think they should just have like a base level, and they should have like. Because they've got Fairy Illumination, which dim light and 15 foot, but I think give them like guiding light, which is lasts for an hour or lasts for 8 hours. Something stupid. I don't know, whatever they want to do. And that what it does is it helps, like, it gives you just advantage on wisdom saving throws, probably for the rest of that, for that whole time as well. Or investigation for navigation, nature checks or something like that.
Get an advantage on that, because you can see the path is clear now because you're the light. It pushes back against the darkness or any fog or anything like that. Yeah, flavoursome. Yeah, I like that.
You can't be surprised. You can't have any surprise attacks when you're in this light or something like that because you know anything that's caught in it. And then give them. It's got dancing light, detect magic, prestidigitation, and then once at will, and once they locate creature. I would also give it like clairvoyance and maybe like detect good and evil, and maybe stuff like a bit more, and maybe like
heroism was I was thinking as well, like just
fairy fire.
Fairy fire would be good,
because it's light in the name, but also the whole point is about them making lights and then seeing things better. I think would be kind of cool that they can just cast fairy fire on creatures. But my point is, I really like the idea of it as this like could be helpful, could be like. You could play it that they're only helpful to people of good nature or on a good quest. And then, but then if you, what their determination of good and bad may be different and maybe dependent on like fae things that we don't understand.
Well, they're fickle and unreliable, aren't they? So like, I would love to see like an alternate a stat block for this where it's like you've offended them so they go into their dread form or something like that. Maybe that's just me, because instantly when you talk about pathlighters, I'm instantly thinking of like a Will o' the Wisps, which again are like lights that they've been. So that's what I was thinking, is like, maybe you come into clash and like, we've been burnt before by these Will o' the Wisps and so got stuck in a swamp. How can we trust this creature? And so I think because this particular fairy pathlighter, it is a supporting, ideally good character. That's what it's sort of here for. So you shouldn't be fighting them, depending on who you are. So I just thought that it'd be nice to have him. But again, fairy fire is a good example of his, like, lighting up the whole area would just give them something a little bit more spell attacky, you know what I mean, rather than all these sort of helpful supportive ones. It's the only thing I thought, because I'd love to see, like, because again, they're unpredictable and reliable and amoral, but this one felt good, and which is great. But I just feel like, well, what if they have another means to lead you somewhere that you don't want to go because you've failed some sort of test, or you're a part of a bargain or something like that.
And the fact that they overlap with that, when you get to looking at the Fae and how they deal in, like, they have the imposter Fae, and they have, as well as all these different layers of it, and the different ways that the courts and these the kind guards, this sort of interrelationship they have between, the kindly lord, sorry, that's it, because that's it, the kindly lord, that's what the main guy, that's
the main person,
yes.
The main sort of lord. And what I want to say, actually, just going quickly into that high Fae stat blocks as well. Again, we've already mentioned, like, the art is amazing and stuff like that, but actually all the art of the Fae, again, it's not how I imagined High Fae don't.
No.
They look very alien-like. Their sort of hair goes up into these sort of almost like bramble branches type thing with like a big gap between them. Where again, maybe you put magic in it or something like that.
They're more dryad-y. That's kind of what they feel.
Yeah, again, just the way they look and their eyes are pupilless and all that sort of thing. So I would recommend checking them out because again, it's that sort of thing going like, if you come across one, it's not like, oh, this is another traveler. You're like, this is an alien being, but it's in a fantasy world. And I just thought it was so interesting that all the artwork for the High Fae is just really cool.
What I was getting at with the imposter thing is that they also talk about like the fact with the fairies being a little bit prankish. They have the same thing with this imposter idea that they even have these fae which try to like do like pranks to malicious infiltration, it says, and they take on the identity of other creatures. And with that, one of their actual and well, that's it. So that even they would know access a small portion of that creature's mind. Any information that creature might share with casual acquaintances, they will know. So even if you do okay, so what's your favorite color? And they were like, yellow. And you're like,
the loot likeness is a bonus action. It's really cool. Actually, like you said, when they then transform, they retain its game statistics as the sort of the Fae, but also gain access to enough general knowledge about the imitated creature. The only thing is that they can't. It has to be someone that they see. So it's that idea, like they go, I'm just gonna go off and get water from the brook, and you go, okay, this is my chance to come in and like see what's going on, and like I really like that, but it only works for so. But you can't see through the illusion, like. You can't see, you might have to do a lot of testing and stuff. I thought those were really interesting, and it really builds into that whole thing of like you can't trust people here, and like here as well, it has Vexing Prank as one of its actions. The High Fae targets one creature it can see within 60 feet of itself with a magical trick. DC 18 Wisdom saving throw on a failed save. It takes 21 psychic damage and has the frightened condition to the start of the High Fae's next turn. On the successful save, it takes half as much damage. But the only thing I'd say, I would love an example of what
more flavor.
What
please.
Is a magical? Is it like you pull your jaw down really hard and it's like what's the Vexing Prank? I would love
the prank that actually makes you frightened.
Frightened and take 21 psychic damage.
Exactly.
I would love a table. I need a table of like what it could be. It's not going to be like pick a card, any card. You don't have a card. Life is meaningless. Is it that? I don't know.
No, that's very cool. And with it, it kind of sticks with the same theme in terms of like what they have as spells. So they have Friends, Minor Illusion, Enthrall, a Nystul's Magic Aura, which is not something I've heard of before. It's a similar sort of vibe of making everyone think you are something cool.
So I was going to mention quickly the High Fae Mage as well, because they have a really cool act. So all these creatures, I think the High Faes do quite well in this compared to like the fairies. So the High Fae Mage is obviously more the spellcaster ones, but they have a particular action called Negotiate Life, which you recharge on a 5 or a 6. The High Fae enacts a magical bargain, siphoning off energy from its opponents to heal its own wounds. The High Fae targets up to 3 creatures it can see within 60 feet. The target must make a DC 19 Constitution saving throw, taking 26 or 4d12 necrotic damage on a failed save and half as much on a successful one. And then the High Fae, regardless of what happens, regains 30 hit points.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah. That's the Vexing Prank. You wait, he's stronger than ever before. What a great! Oh, I love that. That's such really a cool rechargeable ability. I really like that.
Their counterspell is also one of my favorite, most mean things in the world because counterspell in itself is awful. But on top of that, to then say that the caster takes 3d6 psychic damage and must make a DC 19 charisma saving throw on a fail save, the spell fails. But the fact that DC 19 that's a high charisma roll.
All these DCs are high, right?
And that's charisma because there are a lot of charisma spellcasters. I understand that, but there's a few that aren't, and a lot of the people that aren't charisma spellcasters don't take charisma. Do you know what I mean? There's not like a lot of wizards don't put the time in charisma.
Yeah.
Neither rangers,
artificers, their intelligence,
artificers, druids as well, and so like you might not put that in there, and then to not only lose your spell but also to take 10 psychic to 3d6 side damage on top is just a bit of a kick in the teeth, I thought. So
I love
which I
it.
liked.
So good. Yeah, some of these are challenge rating like 1.5. This one, the particular Fey one we're talking about now, is a challenge rating 12, and they go all the way up to challenge rating 18. So there's something for everyone. And again, I know you can obviously change it to be suitable for things, but this is brutal. That can you imagine? Because you're like, oh, it's just another Fey sorcerer. It's like, no, this is. Having damage and you lose your spells, you lose the spell. You don't lose the spell slot, which is fine if you fail. Which is, I think that's quite kind. But like, yeah, because you're taking that damage at the same time, so you're not losing two different resources.
Yeah, and the fact that it does plus 11 to hit elemental strikes as a base level, which is melee or ranged spell attack.
Yeah,
and does 2d10 plus 7 acid, cold, fire, force, lightning, or thunder damage, whatever it chooses. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
I think to stick with the whole like theme that they have of like tricksy, hard to catch, and they're not like glass cannons at all because they've got really high hit points. But like the kind guard, which is the more soldier, fighter type, has evasion. It has evasion as standard, so it can take only half damage, or it takes no damage if it succeeds on any of those things. Just like evasion for a rogue, which is like it's a beastie fighter, but also has roguish abilities because it also can have bonus action darting flight, which allows it to move up to its speed as a bonus action without taking any opportunity attacks.
So cool.
Which is so cool. So this thing, which has a plus 10 to hit claymore, which is like a two-handed huge weapon, like 4d6 plus 6 force damage, not just attack, just so you're not getting out, reduces your speed by 10 feet to a minimum of 5 feet, and the reduction lasts the start of the phase next turn. So if it keeps hitting you, it can do two of those attacks.
Yeah.
And uses its tripping fate, where it can target another one large or smaller creature it can see within 10 feet, and it can make them prone. So it can literally dart across the room, it can stab someone twice and trip your mate over, and then bugger off with its walking.
Yeah, without being hit as a result.
And then if you try and hit it back, it adds 4 to its AC with its reaction. And if it does succeed, it then gets another attack against you.
Yeah, if the attack hits or misses. So even if you attack it goes, no thank you, it's like, stop it. I've defeated you handedly.
Once a turn. That's a reaction every go.
Parry and riposte is, such a cool creature. Like, again,
really cool.
We've not had it. I can't think of any. But from Wild Beyond the Witcher, like Lich does this again. I know it's meant to be a non-combat sort of thing, or it's going towards that. Finding this in the middle of like an enchanted wood, you're fucked. Like you have to be on your toes about it. And it makes me very excited to see these kinds of creatures with a lot of options for the game master to put it across. So I just think it's just very interesting how where would you put this sort of encounters? Like, do you have someone tracking you, and that's how they're tracking you with these particular creatures, like the mage and a couple of king
maybe
guard.
A pathlighter.
Yeah, and then maybe an imposter comes in,
Exactly. And then to up the ante, you've got through all of this, you've survived the mage, you've survived the kind guard, and then a noble turns up, and it gets even worse.
Yeah.
And it takes everything up to 13, actually, not 11. But it's it's like it's got some of the coolest named things, I think. Ever.
Yeah.
Not only does it have an aura of overwhelming splendor and a stunning soliloquy effect, but also not only just like it's not a fast step or lightning step, it's a capricious step.
Yes.
Like very cool. And they're all really good. Overwhelming splendor, it radiates dazzling and mollifying magic. Each creature of the high face choice that starts its turn within 5 feet must take a DC 19 wisdom save or be charmed. And that is it. It's got legendary resistance 3 times a day, magical resistance, and stunning soliloquy. What does that do, Fiona?
Oh, gosh. Again, I love this sort of thing. So, the High Fae unleashes a string of magical words. Each creature of the High Fae's choice within 30 feet of itself must succeed on yet another DC 19 wisdom saving throw or have the stunned condition as well. And a stunned condition can repeat its flavor. So, you have a choice of either being stunned or charmed as well. And again, I don't think it says you're not resistant to it if you make the save. you know, and especially with that aura of overwhelming splendor as well, unless you've got an item or you've got advantage of that, it's going to be hard. And yet you're charmed.
19.
It's bad.
It's high. And that's 1 minute as well, which is 10 whole rounds of combat.
And they easily could be like, that person's stunned and charmed. I'm just going to talk to you. I'm going to do my evil plot revealing thing. And now I will precocious step and then just disappear invisible. You know, that's another reaction they have is ridicule, which again is just perfect, right? Perfect. When a creature misses a high fae with an attack roll, the high fae magically mocks the creature, dealing 5 psychic damage. And he's like, oh, poor show. It's that kind of attitude.
Exactly.
I'm like, yes, of course I want to do that.
So
I want to be like, that's a shame. Oh, try it next time. You know, like, oh, you got it next time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just
no, it's so taunting.
It's as you said. Those stat blocks, I mean, all of them, I think, but it really goes like, okay, here is what the creatures are. How can we make it? And not only is it like, okay, well, here's the bog stand. And easily it could just be like, you know, multi-attack, blade attack, bite attack. But they've gone, let's name them and make it really in theme, get into the tropes of it. And it, makes me excited. And I go, well, I absolutely want to play this character. And you can be like, right, maybe we have a band of these adventurers of these high fae. You come into contact, we go back to the rivals thing, you know. So, I just... really excited by how cool and how the players have to be smart. They can't just rush in and hit. You've got all these things in their arsenal, especially if they've got legendary resistances and magic resistances as well. Really cool.
As you said, it's so thematic in the stat blocks thematic, which I think is great. You know, like it's because you could, as you said, you could be really brilliant. Just make them super high powered. Like here's loads of magic. Here's loads of overpowered. Like we're just going to make them their fae, so they're going to have wish and fireball, and it's just going to be an explosion of magic. And it's like, no, we're actually going to give them really cool different things that make this, because at the end of the day, D&D's like 1/3 of it is combat and tactical combat in that sense as well. Like if you really want to get in, if you want to, like obviously
it's clever, isn't it? It's tactical, clever, and also a hint of smugness as well with the ridicule, you know. And you're just like, yes,
Well, I just like the idea that you might stay at a distance and then get stunned, and so you're like, no, we got to go in. So your fighter rushes in within 5 feet, charmed. It then casts suggestion on you, and you're done. And then that's your fighter, you know, like out of action for a bit, you know. And that's it. That's that. And then the capricious step, which I haven't even meant, if it takes damage, magically has the invisible condition, teleports along with any equipment it's wearing to an unoccupied space it sees within 30 feet itself. The invisibility lasts until the end of its next turn.
Yeah. So it's like, woohoo, gone.
Bye. Yeah.
Bonk, catch me. Yeah, exactly.
So it's just, it will be so infuriating. But in a great way. Exactly.
I was going to mention one of my favourite ones. We will obviously there are certain ones which I'm like, that's clearly Fiona bait. So we'll go. I'm sure we'll come to those in a second. But I wanted to talk a little bit quickly about the red tooth werefox, which really interesting. So essentially, the story behind them is that they are elves of the Red Tooth Keep, and they're agile, adept rangers, and they patrol the lands, and they're trying to like protect elven folk and the last sort of citadels of it because they've been driven from their homes. Again, your mileage may vary on that kind of story, but basically at one point they were transformed into these ruthless sort of werefoxes because a legend says that they denied help to a group of travelers one time, very Beauty and the Beast style, and one of them turned out to be a witch and cursed them, declaring that their bodies should forever be transformed to match their heart's selfish and bestial natures.
Great.
Love that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, like, again, it's not related to like the moon or anything compared to other web foxes. I just think it for me, I see it as it happens at night. As soon as the sun goes down, they change into these were foxes. And it doesn't say like it says they can't necessarily speak. In my head, I think they can. They're just ashamed of their form because maybe they were trying to do good, and maybe that now that generations have passed, they have still been afflicted by this curse. And I just thought, that's really cool. It's just a different change on it. The stat block itself isn't necessarily like incredible. It's got stuff like entangling arrow, for example, which again has that idea of like, tangled vines. If you hit something, people are restrained as a result. And it's got like vulpine nimbleness, etc. I just thought the story behind it it's so different to the normal like lycanthropy, like they turn into a werewolf and they're bestial and it's a full moon, etc. I think here it doesn't say like they keep their minds or anything like that, but in my head they do, and they have to live with the shame that that a mistake was made. Again, that very Beauty and the Beast style, very fairy tale style. And is there a way to lift such a curse? And there's no answer. But again, it's that sort of thing going, instantly I can make this into a story that maybe somebody is trying to break the curse for them.
That leads me on to one of my next favorite ones, which is about like the story of it and how I think slightly differently in this one. I just want one of these as a companion, which is the Witch Stalker, and I could just see a whole story built. I was literally reading this, and I was like, I've got it. Like this is a really cool campaign. So the Witch Stalkers, and I'll talk about the Witch Kites as well because I was
going to say Witch Kite was what I thought you were going to go for, but Witch Stalkers,
I do like the Witch Kite equally as much, but this one more because I was like, I read this and I was like, yeah, I want this campaign, right? Yeah. So it's the twice the size of their ordinary kin of a wolf. So it's a witch. It doesn't say it, but a witch was a giant wolf drawn to the source of magic by the supernatural sense of smell. As a result, the moors and forests of Dunbarrow make for good hunting grounds. The greater the source of magic, the more witch stalkers are drawn to the area. To their dismay, witches have drawn as many as a dozen witch stalkers. They resemble monstrous wolves with enormous jaws and ridged spines. By feeding on spellcasters and other sources of magic, witch stalkers develop their own magical abilities, including a supernatural howl and the ability to teleport next to unsuspecting prey.
Horrific.
And I was like, these are so freaking cool because they have like not only because they've got decent hit points and like relatively decent armor class, and I think you could build these up and have like a Witch Stalker like alpha or something like that, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But they've got they can smell magic, they've got magical resistance. Anything that's like sense the presence of location magic at 120 feet has advantage on attack rolls against creatures that have cast a spell since the last turn. So by making spells, it makes it they get advantage against you, which I think is great. It's like really ramping up that stuff. It can take 2 bites, which is really cool.
Ow.
Yeah, which is normal. But the mind-racking howl, it reaches a terrible howl. Each creature in 30 feet that isn't a monstrosity makes a wisdom saving throw and must take 7d6 psychic damage. And has disadvantage on constitution saving throws to maintain concentration on spells until the end of its next turn, which is so good. And it's Spell Stalk, which is immediately after a creature within 120 feet of the witch casts a spell, it magically teleports right next to it within 5 feet unoccupied space and can make 1 bite attack.
Heck yes. Oh my god, terrifying. Because you hear the howl, you're going through the forest and they go, quick, we're gonna have to we'll cast light or a tree strike and open the door and suddenly there's bloody wolves next to you.
Hello. Rough.
Hello there. Hello, friend. Maybe that's the thing I would change about this is it can understand comic book cast people. I like the idea that's like, hello, friend. Ha, ha, ha. I'm going to eat you now.
It's one of those little, like, it's actually a little duckless. Squirrel.
Squirrel. Ha, magic. The only thing I'd say, and maybe it would make it overpowered, is that it doesn't have pack tactics, is the only thing I'd say. But, I mean, it's quite fucking brutal as a result. So maybe then if you were going to make the alpha, like you said, or a leader of some sort, maybe that would have pack tactics and then work on that sort of thing. That's the only thing I said, because I can imagine there's a whole team of these wolves that are coming chasing you. I've been sent by one of these other creatures that is like, a guardian of the forest or is hunting down particular...
I really like mage slayers though as a thing, as like, I know that sounds really bad, but like what I mean is that in D&D, like magic is so overpowered and it can be like really over like lent on, do you know what I mean, at higher levels particularly. And so I really appreciate when there's really good like creations in like monsters or like adversaries which affect magic like massively, and I tried to make a class which I'm reappropriating for my Witchborn thing, and I don't mean to bring it up every week, but it's just because it's in my mind. But which was like the anti-mage, like a mage that's all about just purely about draining magic. It's I think more of that should be necessary at like higher levels, because like counterspell is, but like this where it's like you cast a spell, you're gonna lean on your crutch of magic. Well, or you're going to get punished for it.
Yeah,
like
absolutely. It feels very Witcher, doesn't it? It's like somebody who has been gifted with certain powers is now for hunting down creatures who are maybe chaotic in their powers or have too much in it, so it's a danger sort of thing. So again, it says it's unaligned, these witch stalkers, but I like the idea that it could be used for good and evil and anything.
Well, it's just more just for your players. Just if you've got wizards and stuff like that, just giving them something extra to think about, because they can just sometimes they can get a little bit like, I'm going to stay at the back and I'm going to throw fireball. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I've got it written out as a list, and to chuck in an animal that every time you cast a spell teleports next to you and bites you and has magical resistance, I think is like a lot of fun. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, it changes that battlefield so much. Yeah, it again, all these creatures make the players think we can't. It's not the usual hack and slash. I'm going to be at the back. I'm going to be this. You have to adapt, and I think that's what gets me excited about this. Again, not only seeing high fantasy in this fairy tale, like that's not. It's not punching down. It's not my like family friendly or anything like that. It's not Disney-fied, right? But then at the same time, it's making go, oh shit, I can't go into this half asleep. I can't go. I'll use. Yeah, I really like that.
And that's it. It's not because I want to like always test my players. It's just no. When it's like sometimes the players want, it's like I've played this character. I'm level 10 for about 8 sessions, and this is getting a little bit. I know what I'm doing, and chucking that in. It's like, oh, that was really tense. Those are the ones where your players go, oh, I had to think about that.
I think if anything, it makes you want to include random counters again when you're journeying through these forests.
Yes.
Like I think before you'd be like, oh fuck, it's because it's more goblins. You dispatch them.
Yeah.
No, I think this is the sort of thing where you would easily make up your 20 encounters. Some of them combat, some of them not, and then roll for it. And if it comes up, you get excited. It's you don't know what's going to come up, and you're going to have to be on your toes a little bit rather than go hack and slash. Okay, great, more treasure. Let's go to the next story point, because all of these could be easily like added to the story point. Like you meet these witch stalkers, and the person that's leading them, and they're like, well, we're trying to find this witch. Have you heard any information? And then could be its own little side quest. So really like that.
I just like the idea of like there's a campaign, like you need to find a magical item, and it's like, well, you could find a witch stalker, but I don't know if it will, and you're like, but it's, how are you going to get it to like follow the scent? Like, could you make a bargain with it? Like, let's speak with animals and be like, hey, we're trying to find this thing. We'll give you magic food. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, I don't know if you've sorry, it's a minor side track here, but like, I don't know how much you've played through Baldur's Gate, but there's a dog outside Baldur's Gate itself, which if you speak with animals, it's called Biscotti, this dog.
Okay.
And you go up and you speak to animals, he goes, oh, here it comes. Oh, get ready. And then your option is to say good boy. And so you say good boy, goes, yes. Oh my God. 10 out of 10. Perfect. No notes. And that's the attitude I want with these witch stalkers. I want you to be like, I want them to go, what's it going to be? Oh, it's a magic item. Yeah. Oh my God. Play.
I mean, I totally agree. I was thinking my mind had gone totally edgelord, which is like
either or.
And you've got 2 witch stalkers as your companions, and a witch is I don't like magic, and I'm like, you know what I mean? It's like, it can so see that, like you can so see. You know exactly the kind of player that's going to come up with that one. Like, my name is
Fangtooth, and here's my dog, Spot.
Yes. Snuffy.
Let's go.
I kind of enjoyed those, and I enjoyed the witch kites as well, which are, got to have my dragons, but they don't like hoarding material. This is really good because I keep forgetting how to spell hoard and hoard of things. Like there's a horde of zombies and then there's a horde of materials. Really annoys me that it's spelled differently. So I'm going to have to try and remember this. But witch guys prefer hoarding forbidden and dangerous magical secrets. And the arcane nature of their hoard seeps into the dragon's core, granting it spellcasting ability and twisting its fire breath into malevolent motes of magical flame. And I like how they are kind of it calls them a warlock. And I like that actually in theory, and I like my sort of headcanon for these was that they are actually like have a pact with their horde in a sense. Like the horde has some form, like because of its overly magical nature, and there's so much magical ability like in one area, it sort of animates itself and therefore makes a pact kind of deal with the witch kite to like I don't know, and I think you could have a lot more fun if you wanted to really take this on, someone had the time to like give it like serious tables and be like, it has the abilities of like roll on a random magical item table and it gains that ability this turn, for example. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know what that could be off the top of my head, but like a ring of protection, or it could be a bag of holding and you can figure out how that works, like for this, and you could really play on it adding these different magical abilities because it's kind of in tune with its own horde or something like that.
I love that. Yeah, I love that because it talks about combining Fizban's Treasury of Dragons with this as well. Like, for the different dragons and stuff, which I think is great. But yeah, now I just have in my head these huge big like paws, sort of with the claws on it. Each of them has like a bag of holding strapped to it, like a little ring, and it goes, "Yes, should I get in here?" And then I really like that idea of like every like a lair action, a new magical effect, and it is like maybe from the uncommon, depending on the dragon, like an uncommon item or whatever, like a ring of protection or a bead, the beads of fireball, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I like the bag of holding. Maybe it just like sucks in and it envelops one character and they're just in the bag of holding.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's it.
Ooh,
and we have to now get them out somehow.
Amazing. No, I really like, and again, it has all the sort of stuff like retribution as well. Like it makes a rend attack if it's been attacked, all that sort of thing. It's a really cool thing. In my head, I imagine this. If you remember the old Sleeping Beauty Disney film, the where Maleficent turns into that huge dragon. So again, it's this black dragon with green flame, and it's so vibrant. That's what I'm thinking at this case. That I would describe it like that.
I'd forgotten that scene. That is such a cool scene.
Great, isn't it? So again, again, it's that, and you've got here like it's the particular image it shows here is of brambles and stuff as well. I think that's the only thing I would add is maybe have like brambles it could do, like some of the spellcasting. Is the usual like detect thoughts, dimension door, etc. I want to like tangle, like briars or something like that to really hone in.
Who has a good one of those? Is it the heart who has a really good one? Entangling growth. That
the
one.
Heart does. Yeah,
something like that. You could just probably nab and chuck it in there.
Yeah, it's almost like a natural ability, that sort of thing. So just to go back to that Sleeping Beauty like style. So yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
The one I want to mention before I get going on to the obvious ones that were like, what is this? I actually want to talk about the Sewer King, if that's all right.
Yes. No, I like that one as well. Big rats.
Big rats. We're a big fan of rats. Rat catchers for life. The Sewer Kings are these hulking, monstrous rats empowered by fiendish blood. This unholy influence gives Sewer Kings their enormous size, supernatural strength, wicked cunning, and ability to speak. Deep in the bowels of towns and cities, the Sewer Kings reign supreme over underground vermin, dreaming of the day when rats will overthrow surface dwellers. I mean, come on. What a villain to have. We always talk about like, rat kings or something like they turn into these, like just infested like rats turning into someone, but an actual big rat, hell yeah. And they even give you an example of someone called Lord Skitter of Edgewall, who is a Sewer King that lives in this particular town. Basically, I just love this idea that it's a twist on a fairy tale, the Pied Piper of Hamelin, where it's like this human minstrel has encountered the Lord and has struck a vile bargain, where Lord Skitter has promised to keep the wondrous power to this particular bard in order exchanging for giving townsfolk to become food for the rat minions. Great, I love that idea. It's like, oh, this feels like very Pied Piper of Hamelin, and you go, oh no, it is absolutely not that. You think the bard, this minstrel's at fault? It's only part of the story. Look at this massive fuck off rat, it's great, love that. Massive fan.
You fought Skaven in our Mordheim campaign. They're great. I love the Skaven and everything. Yeah, rat folk are fun. I mean, I tried to make a whole game about it, and I will finish it one day. And so, they're all great. The actions it has are like not terribly like, it's only a challenge rating 2, which I think is a bit of a shame. But when I was reading it, I was getting like, oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah,
like,
big.
This is going to be like, and then it was like, So it's got like a rancid bite. It's got summon a swarm.
Again, you wouldn't face it on its own. You would face it with loads of like swarms of rats. I think that's what it's trying to do. I definitely saw it as like a challenge rating 3 or 4. So maybe I'd beef up a little bit more of the hit points, perhaps maybe some more armor. I definitely would like to give it a power or something like it can comprehend and verbally communicate with any beast. I was like, give it an RP accent. Give it like a proper villain, Alan Rickman style talk. That's what I was expecting. expecting. Yeah, I think I would like.
count to 4.
I would definitely like something like maybe like a gaze of some sort. Like we have all these dragons and stuff like a enticing gaze or a penetrating gaze, and you're like frightened by this creature. That's the only thing I can.
Or like maybe give it like the bardic thing where it starts like piping or something. Like it starts like dancing or
music.
I don't know.
Yeah,
like musical.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
A pipe appears in front of you and you start lyrically piping and your friends around you get charmed or something like that as well. I don't know, that could be quite cool. Yeah. I'm just looking through and I'm like, how do you choose another one to go from there? Because there are so many ones, like the Goose Mother I want to talk about, the Ginger Brute I want to talk about, the weird candy cane fighter I want to talk
Sweet
about.
Tooth Horror. Well, why do we do those in order then? Let's talk about the Goose Mother, shall we?
Because Goose Mother.
Oh, this is if you've seen Never After or anything like that, this is the kind of thing that this nightmare of dreams, where this idea basically imagine a goose or geese in general, they're pretty aggressive, but what if they had more than one head? And welcome to the Goose Mother, this horrific sort of like astonishingly aggressive geese that has been descended from a many monstrous headed bird that dwells deep in the Isles in the wilds itself. And I like, again, the little story about like how this witch made this, and then is like quite frightened of it because it's like getting more and more aggressive. Great. And then it devours the witch in the end and then rampages into the wilds where it lives to this day. But the reason why you might want to fight such a creature is that it lays a golden egg precisely on the hour, once every hour. So God, tough being a mother, isn't it? You also get like, you can either be a geese or it could be valuable trinkets or anything like that. So again, is that something going like, is it worth like to go in and face this creature to capture some of its eggs but not kill it? Are we farming it in a certain way and finding out stuff? So yeah, I really find it really interesting. Again, another twist on the fairy tale.
Exactly. And we have 2 hydras in this game. There's a turtle one as well, and they have quite similar stat blocks. The art's great, and the fact that you've given a goose legendary resistance is hilarious, like in the sense, the start of it. And like, I love it. And like, you have to kill it. You have to do more than 25 damage in a single turn, and it loses 1 head. And it's only when all heads die. But at the end of every turn, it gains 2 heads for everyone that's died.
Yeah.
So it is your classic Hydra, which is ridiculous. Unless you do, and like the same with the other one, there's it only doesn't do it unless it's taken poison damage. So you have to figure those things out, which is kind of good. The Lullaby of Honks.
Yeah, I was going to say Lullaby of Honks. So the goose heads honk a discordant melody. Each creature within 10 feet of it must make, of its choice, make a DC 15 Constitution saving throw. Again, pretty high. On the failed save, it takes 7 thunder damage and then falls into a magical slumber. And these honks can be heard from up to 300 feet away.
Yeah.
Great. So you know it's coming.
And the slumber lasts for 8 hours.
Unless you get hit by something, it's pretty grim. But like, again, all I can thinking of is the an Untitled Goose Game. So again, you go to a village and go, you never guess we've had a real bad problem with the goose. I don't suppose you could go sort it out. And you're like, yeah, what could possibly go wrong? And you just see around the corner, I am a silly goose, honk, 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 honk. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, oh no, yeah. So that's what I would take as inspiration. These people going, oh, it's been in our gardens and it's disrupted the market and the festival. I don't suppose you could do something about it. And you're like, this is a monster. He goes, well, I mean, we like to say aggressive goose, but okay, yeah, sure, a monster it is.
It's very true. I like it. It's a really fab. It's fab.
I guess the Ginger Brute and also the Sweet Tooth Horror, very similar vibes. Again, there's this thing in Magic which talks about horrors, and particularly in Eldraine, it's talking about food-related stuff. So we have candies, like the Ginger Brute is a gingerbread person, and the Sweet Tooth Horror is like there used to be a Sweet Tooth village that was run by a witch and who created all these horrific things to keep her safe, but they turned on her. Now you have these horrible lollipop candy cane S-type creatures.
Yeah,
great. One thing I would absolutely recommend people do, so the Throne of Eldraine cinematic trailer is fucking wild, because you start off in a castle, you're in the kitchen, and there's 2 gingerbread men being made. There's like a femme presenting one and a male presenting one, and they are cut out and they come to life, but they're holding each other's hands. So again, very Shrek-like. And then there's a big fight that's happening, so they're trying to escape. And then, massive spoiler, in a way, one of them dies. The male person dies because he tries to save the female one, and she just turns and she just goes, like big things, and goes to attack the big person. It's great. She becomes a knight in herself in the lore. I highly recommend checking out the trailer because you're like, damn, this is like a proper like heart-wrenching trailer.
This is the whole thing.
This is an origin story, you know. So yeah, I'd recommend that and take that sort of aggressive. Yeah, because also these gingerbread people, like if you defeat them and if you eat them, you get some temporary hit points. You're like, oh, this tastes very nice, which is wild because you're like, this is cannibalism, but also it's candy. So you're thinking of Crown of Candy as well, like the. All this sort of stuff,
The thing I like about Sweet Tooth Horror is the caramelization effect, which is when it takes fire damage, it releases a sweet, mesmerizing scent. Each creature within 30 feet must make a DC 11 wisdom, which is very low. Be charmed.
Yeah.
And that's great. I just love that idea that it's like, you burnt it.
Yeah, and then you don't do anything, and it's like, I will attack you. Yes, exactly.
I would say if you haven't eaten within like 8 hours, you must make the disadvantage or something.
Yes,
I think it would be a really good idea. And I like how it says the horrors of Sweet Tooth Horror is like, oh, you could add the ginger fruits, but you could also add a black pudding. Could be a delicious chocolate, or a gelatinous cube might have a more directive shape, and an ochre jelly could smell like butterscotch. Right? Yeah, I guess so.
This is the thing. I like how it gives you suggestions. It doesn't have to give you a whole lot of stuff. It goes, hey, here's one thing. How about these other things that you already have in it? And again, whilst there's flavour in quite a lot of these, sometimes there's not enough in others. But I'm just saying to go, yeah, of course I want to run my version of the Cadbury's factory, but with all these Sweet Tooth Horrors and those chocolate button creatures and all that sort of thing. So it's just such an interesting thing compared to other compendiums we've looked at where we've gone, not so sure. Now I'm like, I don't know much about Eldraine, but now I just want to run fairy tales, and like it just feels so fresh and new, which I know sounds really silly because obviously fairy tales have been around for ages.
My other sort of like goth one that I love is the Spectre of Night. Obviously.
Yes, the Spectre of Night versus the Archon of the Boundaries. So cool. They're very similar creatures in the sense of like they look to be like a person on a mount, whereas the Archon is like a silvery stag and a person, whereas the Spectre of Night is just, frankly, a horrible thing of like a many-faced thing, and they find knights, like dead knights, and they just pop them on the back and it's like, you're mine now. And they are one creature. Very cool. Oh, horrible.
Yeah. There's a really great, and it's a little bit different, but it was just reminding me of it in Old World Warhammer. There's a character they have that you can have where it's they take Grail Knights. They're a thing in one of the areas they're called Grail Knights, and when the Grail Knight dies, they become like a relic. And so what they do is you can have a set which is like 8 pallbearers, and they're holding up the corpse of skeleton of a horse and the rider, and that's one of your characters that you take into battle is just like this pallbearers holding this thing which has got this corpse skeleton that's been like hung together of a Grail Knight. It's kind of cool. Just remind me of that. They're pretty brutal. They're challenge rating 12, and they have online resistances to necrotic and immunities to poison. But like the things that really, apart from like the scythe and the hooves and the multi attack, is mournful keening.
Yes,
which is. It offers a keening wail that calls to those close to death. Each non-undead creature within 120 feet, says every single one, must make a DC 15 con save. On failure, here's the wail and is marked for death. Creature marked for death can't regain hit points and has disadvantage on death saving throws, and all attack rolls against it are made with advantage. This effect lasts for 1 minute or until the creature is removed curse. I think that's a pretty brutal effect.
It's brutal. You can't, again, if you pass it, you don't gain resistance to 24 hours, that sort of thing like we've had before. Yeah, it's a one-use sort of thing unless it can recharge it. But why wouldn't you be using that all the time? Because then, again, it's scary.
And you can't re-roll after every turn. It lasts for a minute. That's it. Like, there's no one doing that.
Brutal, really brutal.
We should probably talk about the Archon then, I guess.
Because again, I like the idea that these are two sides of the same coin. So like the Night Spectre and then the Archon of Boundaries, they are both around the wild stuff. The Archon itself is like on the boundaries, and it's if you see it, you know you're about to go into the wilds, the sort of changing aspect of it, and it looks incredible. Again, huge celestial, armor class and 17, challenge rating 15, legendary resistances. It has it's one creature, so you can't separate them at all, which I just think is really cool. So it's more like it is the stag, it is this the mount, as it were, rather than the person, because it's just the way it looks. It has radiant lance, hooves attack, the Archon's pursuit. So when a creature is marked by the radiant lance, ends its turn within 120 feet, the Archon can teleport to it within 5 feet of it. So that's terrifying. Even if you run away, it's marked you, it's going to Yeah, straight next to you. And then Haunting Radiance. Immediately after a creature within 120 feet forces it to make a saving throw, it responds with a huge burst of light. It must succeed on a DC 17 Constitution saving throw or have the blinded condition until the end of the creature's next turn. Damn. So like you manage to get a hit on it. You shoot your arrow, it just turns around, it just a big light thing, and you go, and now you can't see. And then it's going to be with it, again, it's a reaction, to be fair. Oh yeah, and it can take up to 3 reactions per round, but only once per turn. So yeah, somebody else could hit it, it reacts, and that person's blinded. Somebody else hits it, and then it just teleports to it.
Now I understand what that means. I was so confused. I was like, it only has 1 turn per round, but it means per person's turn.
Yeah, it's like a legendary action, essentially.
I get it now. I thought it was like, because it has 3 reactions per round, but only 1 per turn, but it means per individual's turn, not per its own turns.
Yes, correct.
It only has. I was like, has it got more than 1 turn per go?
It's got a multi-attack. That's it.
Yeah, it does that on something else. Like somebody else has 2 reactions, but only 1 per turn. Silly me.
No, but it's different because we're not used to it. So the fact is like, wait, it's taking its next reaction. You're like, what? It doesn't have. You've not said legendary actions. No, it's just reacting to what you do. That's it. It's again, it's this idea of the protector of the forest. If you do something, it's going to come for you. It's never going to make the first move. Yeah, very cool.
I think the more reactions, the better. I think character. We talked about this when we did the UA stuff for the 2024 Players Handbook, and they were adding more reaction stuff into the expertise classes, and I think more reaction stuff you can do, the better. The more fun it makes, dynamic it makes the game, because it's a lot of like, I don't know, it's a lot like JRPGs a bit, turn-based combat, and you're a little bit like, okay, it's my turn, then your turn, then your turn. But when it's like reaction-based, you're like, it's your turn, but I do this, and it's my turn, but you do that, and that's so much more enjoyable than like plus 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 plus.
Well, you're more engaged as a result. Final one I want to mention, obviously we've not mentioned all of them, but the one I do want to mention is the Beanstalk Worm.
Yeah, okay.
Because, fuck, what is this creature? Like, essentially, there's a little bit in the background of the story of Eldraine as well, where Kellen, one of the protagonists, goes up to borrow an artifact, but it's in this cloud giant sort of place. But she has these horrific, like, beanstalk worms. As a first line of defense, I've got those who would ascend these beanstalks. They're called Everstalks in Eldraine. They sort of curl along the length of like a beanstalk with their eyes closed, so you don't know you're climbing it until it's too late. And then a beady eye opens, you're like, oh no, and then it will fall to the ground. Yeah. It's horrific. You imagine they go, oh no, the beanstalk, the Everstalk has come to actually just stalk our own lands. It's like you've set off the first line of defense. It's coming down, and it's gargantuan. It's easy to climb up, so you could be climbing on it. It feels very Tarask-like, but and it's got regeneration as well. The bite attacks. It makes 2 bite attacks. Plus 14 to hit. If it hits, it's 30 damage or 5d8 plus 8 piercing damage. If the creature is a large or smaller creature, it must succeed on a 22 dexterity saving throw or be swallowed. I'm like, I'm dead. I'm not even dexterous enough myself as a person to throw dice to defeat this creature. It has the same sort of thing about once you're in, you're swallowed, you're restrained, all that sort of thing, and then there's acid. Not acid. Sorry, there's piercing damage because the throat itself is actually thorns in the gullet itself, so it's piercing you bit by bit as it tears you apart.
And you've got to do 30 damage, and then it has to make a DC 22 Constitution, which is quite high for it to make. So it must succeed or throw you up, which is quite easy. I feel like that's your back out.
Yeah, I was going to say its saving throw has got a plus 12 to its Constitution saving throw. So fucking hell, it just needs a 10 or more to succeed on that.
True. Actually, that's true. I hadn't taken that into it. So sort of con plus 6. But you're right, saving throw plus 12.
But also, because you're restrained. You can't necessarily fight. It has to be a spell.
Yeah, you can't do somatic, so you can do verbal components. So,
I don't know what you would do to cause that much damage. Maybe armor of Agathis or something. I don't know. How can you do 30 damage in a single turn for a creature inside it?
Unless you've got as you said, a spell, like an artificer that's got a spell gem, so you can break a gem and do that, or you've got lava in your bag of holding.
Yeah, you just slowly open it up and you empty out. But you're gonna. This is I think you're gonna take damage yourself. That's the thing. I can't think of a way to
Yeah.
cut someone else out. Because it's only if they take the damage from inside. It's and the person, if you're trying to cut them out, they have total cover against all attacks as well. So yeah, it's a very cool creature. But I'm just like going like this is Taras territory. Like what's the challenge rating? Challenge rating 18. Yeah, almost Taras territory. But you're like, damn, this is a big deal. This is like an end of a big arc campaign, or even a big storyline. Like, you're like, oh no.
And actually, all the other ones we haven't even mentioned are equally as great. Like the Deathless Rider has got a really cool undead fortitude, which means it can't basically die, which is really cool. The Witches have got a really cool polymorph concoction, which
I love
throws
that.
at people, and it turns you into bats, frogs, lizards, and rats, and it lasts for an hour or until you drop to 0 in your new form, which I think is great. So like, you can just imagine them just doing that. Like, I can't bother with you. I'm not fighting you anymore. Or like they're low on hit points, they just throw the polymorph potion at you and just runs away.
Yeah. There's like the Ogre Chitterlord, Snapping Hydra we talked about. Even the Tempest Heart, we talked about a little bit briefly. Again, they look very cool. They're on the clouds, near the cloud castles and stuff like that. And it's just like a deer, but they have lightning for antlers. And then the pattern of their fur is in the style of a beanstalk. So you talked about it before, where if you hit one of these creatures, if you're hunting one, suddenly then you're restrained by the beanstalk thing, no matter if you're within 120 feet. So, and yeah, like you said, we've got tree folk as well. You've got to always have a tree folk.
Nightmare Haunts, which I thought were another female favorite.
Oh, horrible, aren't they?
Yeah.
And we didn't even talk too much about the sleeping, the wicked slumber. But that comes from the people falling asleep, and then it's a nicer, happier place. But then these creatures are coming from it as well. This sort of like a purpley, sort of misty thing. So yeah, and again, just to talk about it a bit, the reason that this sort of wicked slumber exists is because the Phyrexians, when they came, it was seen as like, well, we put the invaders to sleep and then we'll deal with them. But then it became unchecked. The slumber started to go around to all these people, and it would choose people who would like, I want a better life. I don't want to be, I'm surrounded by this trauma of this war. And I want to be, and going to a land of dreams to seem better. But then the slumber itself could be manipulated so that you could control them. So they could be like armies for you of these like walking dead zombies.
And there's a really interesting bit when the character in the story goes to speak to the Imogen. Is it Imogen?
You're thinking the witch, are you? So the Etrit, where she's got
no, but she goes to meet her, doesn't she?
Yes.
And she goes and explains to her what it is, and she goes, "Oh, I now understand. Yes, it is helpful because when they're in the slumber, they're in a happy place.
Yes,
like when you're in the slumber, you go to your like ultimate dreamland, but then they can still fight for us." And she's like, "Yes, you're right. It is better that they don't have to witness the horrors of the war they're in. They can just in their mind be in happiness, but their body can be in pain." And you're just kind of like, this is really fucked up.
The conversation with Rowan and Etrin is really interesting. But even that whole bit at the beginning, she goes to this castle and she finds all these guards who are decked in this sort of, it's like as if a ball is happening, and she gets turned and like twisted into a dance before she meets up with the witch. Again, like I said, like maybe the writing could be better and all that sort of thing, but there are certain key story beats where I've gone, I want that image. I want to play that out for the characters, because I just thought it was such a cool, like all these people who were asleep and are lopsided and stuff, and it felt very much like, I can't remember the film now. I think it's where there's a fallen star and they have to get, and there's like a knight at the end who dies, but his body is then used by a witch, and they're fighting, and he's just all floppy and moves around like as if a puppet on a string.
Is it that one, Stardust?
I've
not seen it.
Yes,
I've not seen it, but
it's that sort of vibe where like the protagonist is fighting, and the knight just gets up and is just like wandering around puppet like, and just fights. It's an incredible scene to watch, and that's how I imagine it. All these people, like there's a fight at the end between Will and Rowan, and bodies are just thrown. The people are just throwing themselves and getting cut down because of this, and because of the way the slumber works. So the Nightmare Haunt is such a cool, like almost like the first signs of something not right, and then you again maybe you use the stats of a zombie horde or zombies in general just to use them left, right, and center for the sleeping walkers essentially. So this. As you can tell, I fell down a rabbit hole, and I really enjoyed this as a result. I loved it. It was really cool. So good job on choosing this topic. After a couple of ones that I've chosen, I've gone, God, this is awful, Fiona. Why did you force us to read through the elemental scions? Oh. That
was not your fault. You didn't write it. No, this is good. I think, I really enjoyed it. I really thought, as you said, like perfect, like fodder for campaigns. Like, great thing. I don't know. Is it free? Is it a free thing?
I think it's like $5. It's like it's that sort of thing. It's not. It's like all these compendiums. They're not. There may be a couple of dollars to it, but also if you go onto like 5etools.com, there should be some ones there. But you know what? One thing I hope for the future, like we've talked about it before, like, oh, do we care too much about Magic the Gathering settings and worlds? Like, do we like Strixhaven? Like, we enjoyed Ravnica. Strixhaven, I'm not a big fan of fantasy schools. I've sort of made that clear, but I would love to see like an Eldraine setting. I would love to have more of it. I think there's just something interesting about these settings, and Magic the Gathering, they work really hard on the story behind it, which then informs the cards. And I know
it's like a real shame to not. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've got
something there. Yeah,
they've got it there, and they've clearly got really good ideas. And as we mentioned a lot recently, there's not a lot coming, and it feels really outdated now to still be flying about in Forgotten Realms. 10 years into 5e even, and to be the only, like, the latest setting to be Eberron. Like, I know Ravnica is, but like, you know what I mean? Like, D&D's made it itself. That's not been taken from MTG, and it's like, well, just accept that you are Wizards of the Coast and that's where you came from, and like, give us like the one you talked about that you really like, Dust. What's it called?
Dustmourn. Yes, like a horror. Again, that could be a domain of dread.
Just do the setting.
Yeah, Eldraine could easily be a domain of delight. So it's one of those things where I'm like, I can definitely see more of this swimming in. And again, obviously we talked about it a little bit before podcasts, like Aether Drift. That's the current one that's coming out, which is like a galaxy sort of like race amongst the planets. Again, not Planescape, but also Spelljammer. That we can have additional ones of that, I guess. So I look again. There's only so much I can talk about Magic the Gathering, because I will say I'm not the best Magic the Gathering player. I find the cards stuff really hard to get into. But if you really like stories and you're interested to see what these things are going, I highly recommend checking out. If there's a set that really interests you, I always recommend Dustmourn, but even Eldraine, from what we've spoken about, go listen to the story and then see what other ones that you might like. Like the one after this is Outlaws at Thunder Junction, which is like a big cowboy setting where, again, people pop up because these what they're called, these portals, these omen paths open up, and so we see the resurgence of certain planeswalkers and certain enemies. And yes, there's a little bit of like awkwardness, as always with cowboy settings. Let's not, we don't want to get rid of like, the Native American sort of thing. There's a little bit of that in there, which is like, not so much. But if you want to check out some interesting news, like where could we go and how can we put it into our campaigns, I highly recommend checking them out. Like I said, there's not one set for everyone, but there's definitely a lot there. And I didn't really realize it until recently. I mean, obviously, I will absolutely recommend Bloomsburrow, where it is like animals of farthing wood, or Watership Down or anything like that. So that was one of the more famous ones that came out last year. It was just before Dustmourn, and you're all playing animal creatures. Again, it's a big corrupting thing in the forest. So maybe if you want to do some more Beastlands, that's where you put it into. So you don't need to go to these different planes of existence and be like that. You could just take these elements and then put them in where you see fit.
Oh my gosh, this is so Redwall. Did you ever read Redwall when you were younger?
Not when I was growing up. No. I was out of that.
So good.
I will be honest here. Like, I was not too fussed about Bloomsburrow because I was like, oh, it's animals. But let me tell you, my partner who went to all the pre-releases said like it was the most popular thing he'd ever seen.
Wow. Oh well, that's fair. To be honest, if people, I don't know if people realize, but you can. I think it's on Netflix. You can watch all the Redwall videos. Like, I think it's on there. And they're not that bad. I read them when I was a kid. Martin the Warrior and all that stuff was like, that was my pre-Lord of the Rings, same time as Hobbit, but before I read like Lord of the Rings, it's like, oh, this is my fantasy.
My big hope is that they'll do more of these, like, even if it's just supplements like this, where here's 25 creatures based on this setting that you can put into your campaigns. I think just as a way to, again, cross that gap. I mean, I don't know if I would want... I say that I would like a campaign setting. Like, they've done Strixhaven, they've done, Ravnica and Theros as well. Maybe they'll do more of these things. And again, it will depend on the set as well. But I think this is an easy way for people to be like, oh yeah, what's this about? And then, like you said, fall down the rabbit hole and go from there.
If you're looking for something to Google and go in a real Google thing, then this is the place to start. No, I can see how, because there's wikis. There are serious wikis.
There are serious wikis. Yeah. Like I said, take care, because you could be there for hours going like, I don't know who this person is, but they're in everything. And like they'll be like, oh, it's so and so, and I'm like, hooray, I guess. Yeah, and they obviously they're again big names, etc. That's why it does feel like a bit like fan fiction. So yeah.
Yeah. But then again, that's all sort of like RPGs games in a way, to a certain extent, sort of ending that, are sort of borderlining that, like, towing that line, walking that, balance line.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Hamilton, for sending us down the Eldraine hole, as it were. I'm going to live here for a little while now, but where can we find your work? What are you up to? Tell us all the info, please.
Well, as I've been saying the last couple of weeks, really all it's been at the moment is baseball, and getting that Kickstarter going. There's cool things. I think I've said last time it's going to be a miniatures game if we hit £5,000 on the Kickstarter. So if we can hit that stretch goal, that would be really cool, because we've got a really fun idea, because there's one of the lands, I don't know if I said this before, but it's like one of the islands in the Tortured Isles is called Finn, and they did try to do an experiment, open a portal to heaven. Yes, heaven, totally heaven. And it went wrong, and the whole land is covered in mist, and it's toxic, and everyone gets corrupted, and they have to go around wearing iron and lead covered like things as they search for their Heaven's Gate, and we're going to make like miniatures game there where it's going to be awful. That's it. And you're all going to get corrupted, but if you want to get corrupted, you might get benefits for being corrupted, so maybe it's worthwhile, maybe it's a good thing. And the idea is that you'd like rip your arms off your model and stick on like goopy bits to make it all more corrupted. So yeah, make that happen, please, for my benefit, so that I can be making goopy monsters. So that's really it, and you can find the link, or you find me anywhere on the internet as fueled_chaos or fuel chaos, or all that sort of stuff. Now I'm trying to think.
Just to look in your eyes, you look at me going like, now is a challenge.
Now is the challenge, because I feel like I need to up the game every time. And what's a good game? Talking of games.
Yeah.
One of my favorite games is hide and seek, because you have to find out where people are.
Wow. That was pretty good. That I saw the cock whirring, and then you did that. Amazing. Yeah. I too like to know where things are, including the podcast What Am I Rolling? It's a twice monthly tabletop RPG one-shot podcast where we talk about different RPGs and interviews with game designers as well. We are currently, I think by the time this comes out, we'll be in Design Month. So you'll have checked out, hopefully, the Q&A we've done with Prequel, the game designers there, and hopefully, she says, fingers crossed, we've got our live stream done as well, Prequel, which will be out on the One Shot Podcast Network Twitch channel, but also will be on Where as well. We've got a few other bits and pieces as well. We've got some interviews with game designers coming up. We've got interviews with Hatched Games, so our wonderful friend Rich.
Hatchling
Games, but they've got a subset now called Hatch Games, which focuses primarily on horror, because Hatchling Games is obviously more family friendly.
So they're doing Ghast, aren't they?
Ghast, exactly. There's a collection of solo folk horror zines coming out in March, which is very exciting. So with Kat, who's one of the writers for it, and the illustrator Josh as well. So all and very cool.
It looks very good.
The art is fantastic. So go check that out. We'll probably I'm also midway through editing at that time of recording Savage Worlds, and you know what? It was pretty good. I'm quite surprised by it in a good way, in the sense of like we recorded it a lot last year, and we need to finish it off at some point. But I think we've got some good games coming up on the Where. So on the Where, on Where. On the Where. So come check it out. Come to Where. Listen to some podcasts, some RPGs.
Podcast, go on to
Tabletop. Yeah, absolutely. Come check them out wherever you listen to podcasts, and there'll be links in the show notes as always. If you've enjoyed this episode, come talk to us in our Discord. We'd love to. If anyone else plays Magic and has played any of Eldraine stuff. Again, this kind of stuff passed me by until last year, and obviously this came out a couple of years ago. So if anyone's got any cool things they have about Eldraine, I'd love to know more about it, because I think this is now my new obsession, to go back and see the stories and see what cool bits as it were. So come let us know in our Discord. There's again a link to it in the show notes. And I think
if this is out in February, I'm doing Kickstarter, but as you mentioned, it is Zine Quest month, and I'm part of Zine Quest. But please do go and support all your friendly, local, independent TTRPG is by going to check out what's going on Kickstarter or Zine Quest and supporting people that look really cool. Because I've seen a few really cool things on there, and it's a short month, so at least you get paid quicker. So think of it that way when you're thinking of us independent creators out there, and you're like, oh, well, I get paid more per hour this month, so you know.
Well, especially when we're in a time of, like, say, Polygon obviously telling us to be louder about indie RPGs.
To be louder, exactly. So,
but also, the Eddies rolling back their AI submission stuff now. So we want to support people out there who are creating their own. Yeah, the Ennies used to allow AI generated submissions for stuff, and because of a big backlash, they've now taken that away, which I think is obviously it is very good, because obviously we want to support people who like yourself, like people who are doing illustration stuff like that. This is the hard work. We don't want to give it to some AI who is, I don't know, costing us lots of energy and maybe causing a lot of climate change stuff.
I just had my Works AI survey to do today, which was interesting. Ooh. The way it was worded was very much like, so how happy are you to do all of your stuff using AI now? And I was like, and there was a little box saying, I'm not happy. I was like, I've got something to say. Give me a box. I was looking through a box. I was like, where's the box? Not the tick boxes. I want a box.
It's I've also seen some podcast jobs recently. I was looking through just a general sort of look, and there's you must be willing to use AI as part of their workflow. And I was like, what do you mean by that?
Well, that's the thing. Do you mean spell checking, or do you mean
automating
content?
Yeah, exactly.
Like automating, because automating a service is like what we've already got, like the computer doing the calculation in the background for my sum when I do equal sum brackets on Excel. Fine. But anyway.
So I'm sure AI is another topic for another time.
Also, yes, my other point is that using large language models is a different thing, which is like all the energy. But don't worry, because I'm going to get like, they're going to drill baby drill, so it's all going to be fine.
It's fine. Well, no worries. The AI powered Phyrexians will come and take us over from this. So that's what we've learned from this episode. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. We hope to see you next week, and as always, we will see you
on the flip side.
Bye.